Welcome to the Mystery Matt MO show of the. I forgot the name of our show already.
Tell me what ammo stands for.
Oh, yeah, it's Modus Operandi, and now we are MO allegedly. So this week, we have Colleen sitting in for Nancy. It was supposed to be Nancy and Colleen, but, Mother Nature sucks. Um, so at least she got home safe, even though she tried to get here. As you can tell, we're still under construction. So, yeah. This time I wanted to do something a little different, a little bit of a different format. Not that we've done a lot of different. This is only our second video, but yeah. So we're going to go through victimology. I'm not going to say who the victim is, who the unsub is. We're going to do some good old fashioned profiling.
Okay, so you're not gonna tell me who the victim is,
Nope.
who the unsub is, and I need to guess.
Yeah, and I will tell you when you can guess.
Is it like something I'm gonna know?
It's a really easy case.
Okay, all right.
Like I picked probably the easiest case. So to know me,
Okay.
Probably one of the more fun ones.
it might be.
Okay.
Well, not really, because, yeah, anyways, I'll explain why I don't think it's fun later, if I remember. So, let's start. So, victimology is to help law enforcement figure out why a particular person has become a victim. In this case, our victim would ordinarily be considered a low-risk victim, but their public lifestyle puts them in the medium-risk category. So now we're going to take a look at their lifestyle, employment, personality, friends, income, family, substance history, the way they were dressed or the way they dressed, any handicaps, transportation, reputation, marital and dating habits, leisure activities, criminal history, assertiveness, likes, dislikes, and significance event prior to the crime, as well as activities leading up to it. So, you ready?
Do I need to have like a notebook to remember some of this stuff? Oh, thank you. Okay, all right.
All right.
I'm set.
Okay, in case you need to take a note.
All right.
Excuse me. So, our victim was a high-profile public figure in the music world. He tried to keep to themselves in the few years prior to their assassination. So, they wanted more anonymity, which is why they moved from their home country to the United States, settling in New York City. They were slightly eccentric, intelligent, humorous.
Did you want it up now?
No. Sarcastic, and fiercely independent. The victim kept their circle small, usually consisting of other high-profile friends and their small family. Their income was about $200 million, which would be equivalent to $633 million in 2025. Their family consisted of one ex-spouse, a current spouse, and two sons. The mother was killed in an accident when the victim was 18 years of age, and the father was in and out of their life until his father died. The victim had an extensive drug history consisting of speed, LSD, weed, heroin at one point. However, they had been clean for at least the past 5 years prior to death. The victim favored casual dress, often being seen in jeans, t-shirts, sometimes dress pants with a button-up shirt and sports coat, but nothing overly flashy. They suffered from dyslexia. They used a car service in New York, mostly a limousine, and they were often visible, friendly when out, but often reserved as well. They would walk to a nearby bodega to get paper and pick up breakfast, was always kind of the person behind the counter, like always friendly and kind to the person behind the counter. He feared deportation based on political outspokenness. They opted out of most leisure activities, instead preferring to be present for their youngest son, who was 5 at the time, otherwise they were making new music. He had a previous conviction for marijuana possession back in 1968. They would be considered to have often abrasive demeanor, often flippant and cheeky.
The pot? Was it Willie?
No, you can't guess yet.
I already know.
They were a devout and serious Monopoly player, was a lousy driver, and didn't like their own voice. So the significant events leading up to the crime was that it was their first album in 5 years, had just been released, and was very successful. And activities leading up there were that of a magazine interview at home. A few hours later, they left with their spouse to go to a recording studio around 5 p.m. They signed an autograph for a fan before entering the limousine. And at the recording studio, they recorded one track and were satisfied with the outcome and left. So now we go on to the crime scene. At 11 p.m., the victim and their spouse stepped out of the limousine, which dropped them off in front of their apartment building in Upper West Side of Manhattan. As they were walking into the open lobby, the victim's name was called out and 5 shots rang out. The victim was hit 4 times and managed to make it to the foyer of their building, and then they were rushed to the hospital where they were DOA. The area was a public area. It was dark. It was cold during the winter around 11 p.m. Witnesses say there was just one offender, and the scene was both organized and disorganized. The weapon, a book, a record, which was autographed by the victim, were found at the scene. The victim actually was the one who, unsub was the one who had the fan autograph of the album. And also the weapon was a .38 caliber Charter Arms revolver. No shell casings would be found. Nothing belonging to the victim was stolen or taken. The doorman and the victim's spouse were witnesses, but the offender did not leave the scene and was easily apprehended by law enforcement. The autopsy showed the cause of death was internal hemorrhage due to multiple gunshot wounds. Sorry, I had GSW wrote down, so I got confused. The manner of death was listed as homicide. Trauma to the body was that 2 bullets entered the left side of the back, traveled through the left side of the chest, one through his left lung, and exited through the body, and one lodged in the victim's neck. And 2 bullets were found in the left shoulder. Toxicology of the victim came back negative. There was no sexual assault, mutilation, bite marks, facial battery, torture, but would be considered overkill. So, I'm guessing you already have this figured out.
I actually got it by about your second sentence. I do have a question, though.
What?
How can the crime scene be organized and disorganized?
So, the offender himself, because of his personality, left it disorganized. He had the plan, he had showed organization in the plan, the execution, but because he stayed and there was some chaos, it was considered disorganized.
Okay.
And anything outdoors is usually considered disorganized as well.
Okay, all right.
So let's take a quick profile of the unsub. This would be considered a homicide motivated by personal cause that has no sexual or material motivation, but is instead that of an underlying emotional conflict. Erotomania is motivated murder. Motivated by an offender-victim relationship based on the offender's fixation, unquote, and that's from the Crime Classification Manual. The blending of the offender's personality and the victim's personality created in fantasy either from a romantic fixation or a spiritual connection. The unsubbed is often preoccupied by the person who has become an obsession and will often end in homicide. Celebrity stalkers are often highly unpredictable and dangerous. Some suffer from mental disorders like schizophrenia, paranoia, and the aforementioned erotomania. This type of stalker makes them difficult to treat. That means they cannot be rehabilitated. They are socially inadequate. They're often incapable of forming personal relationships in the real world. They create a fantasy world around the object of their obsession. And they lack self-image and often are described as a loner or a loser, and will often pattern their own life to closely match that of their object. So the larger the life victim might be a projection of the unsub's own inadequacies, and facilitates the unsub's need to tap into their obsession's greatness and importance and want that for themselves. So they want what they don't have. Killing their obsession makes them forever linked to that person and gives them the notoriety that they have been seeking and dreaming of. Obsessive personality, behavior based on fantasy, which will tend to escalate rather than de-escalate. And this unsub falls under the identity seeker and delusional-based stalker. The first are looking for fame for themselves. Delusional-based believe that a force, often God, was leading them to fulfill some mission. For this unsub, he felt like he was connected to the victim by some force which aligns with the delusional-based, while at the same time he wants the same level of fame that his obsession has. So, what you got? And how did you come to that conclusion?
Well, let's see. I've
If
known
she
you.
guesses it, I'm just going to turn it on.
Yeah, just pick one up.
Okay, I've known you for how long? Honestly, it was, I think, your second sentence where he moved to New York, immigrated to New York City. Mm-hmm. And that's when I knew. John Lennon. Mm-hmm. John Lennon. Yep. Absolutely. Now, I do not remember the name of his killer.
Mark David Chapman.
Okay, it was one of the 3 name ones. That's right. Mark David Chapman. Actually, to me, that's good because I'd rather remember the name of the person. I don't want to give that killer.
Picture 4, right?
Mark David Chapman is picture 2.
Yeah, I don't want to give the killer that acknowledgement, like you say, he wants that notoriety, that fame. The fact I don't remember his name, that takes it away from him.
Yes,
What
it
is
does.
MDC?
That's Mark David Chapman.
You got it on here twice.
I know, one says second mugshot and the one says first mugshot. So you want to put up the first, or the black and white mugshot.
Yeah, that's what's up.
Yeah, okay. Anyway, so when Matt said this would be a fun one, it's because the guessing makes it fun. It's not fun for me because John Lennon is a hero for me. A lot of people don't like him. A lot of people don't like the fact that he was murdered. I'm talking to it, Chris. Jesus.
Not you. Her.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Sorry.
I'm sorry.
Chris is here in the studio audience this week. So, yeah. So, yeah, talking about John Lennon's death is rather difficult for me. Not difficult, but hard when you're talking about somebody you like and respect and idolize. I liked his outspokenness and his creativity and his craziness. So, I mean, was he perfect? No. No.
Yeah,
So,
he definitely was outspoken.
yeah, so anybody who doesn't know who John Lennon was, he was born on October 9th, 1940 in Liverpool, England. At age 17, he began playing musical gigs with his new band, The Quarrymen. On July 1st, 1957, that is when he met Paul McCartney, and they formed a group called the Beatles. They changed the world of music in the 60s and broke up in 1970. So you're talking about somebody who was part of a mega group, like an amazing group that was so influential in sound and music and writing, and changed the world of rock and roll, essentially. They were crazy famous. So if you're really young, you need to look up like old videos of the Beatles and just see how much they were accumulating, like fans and stuff. It's crazy. You couldn't even go to a concert and hear them because girls were screaming like crazy.
Did you put the name of the photographer on that photo?
It was Getty Lee. It was Getty Images. Yeah. All images were from Google. So.
That's the search engine. You have to put what site they come from.
Yeah. All of them said like Getty Images. Okay. Why are you doing this to me now in the middle of this? Can you do that later?
Yeah, I'm trying not to get sued, but whatever, go on.
Go.
So one thing I remember, like with the Beatles, that started the word that came out, and I heard Chris say it actually, is Beatlemania.
Yes.
And that was kind of the start of, from that point on, we ended up having rock singers, bands that became larger than life. But the Beatles were one of the first really big ones internationally.
They definitely started the British invasion, which would consist of bands during that time of the Rolling Stones, Led Zeppelin, just Eric Clapton's, I think they were the Byrds, I'm not sure, I can't remember. But anyways, and the Who. So there's too many to really kind of knock off right now, but yeah, they were kind of the kickstarters of the British invasion as well. So in August of 1971, Lennon moved to New York City with his second wife, Yoko Ono. And no, she did not break up the Beatles. People just like to blame her. No, she didn't, Chris. No, it was a combination of a lot of things, and she was not the catalyst. If anything, I would put that blame on Linda McCartney.
Maybe she was the final straw?
I don't know. Linda McCartney was pretty damn pushy.
Yeah, but Yoko
Don't
Ono
come for me.
might have had a little part in, but she wasn't the only
Oh, I'm
reason.
sure.
Hell no.
I'm sure, but I think John pushing her on them too was probably more to blame than Yoko herself.
Yeah.
So that day of December 8th, 1980, was just shy of 2 months of him being after his 40, or just turning 40. At 9 a.m. on West 72nd Street, John and Yoko just finished breakfast at a cafe and headed back to the Dakota, which was the apartment building that they lived in. At 11 a.m., the Dakota, the Rolling Stones photographer Annie Leibovitz photographs John and Yoko for the cover. And if you remember, it's actually quite the infamous cover where John's laying on Yoko, but he's naked and she's clothed. And he's you don't see his parts or anything, but you can tell he's naked, right? You get side cheek. So that was a very famous Rolling Stones cover. At 1 p.m. they finished the photo shoot. He got ready to go for a radio interview. At 5 p.m. they finished that interview, and then they headed to the record plant studio. And at that time, as they were leaving, a fan approached Lennon and Yoko and asked for an autograph on his newly released Double Fantasy album. And happily, Lennon says yes. But Chris?
Is that the album that Imagine's on?
No. Imagine's the John Lennon album. It came out about 10 years before.
How long was he in New York City? He moved there in what, 73 you said?
71.
71.
So they were there about 9 years, but Yoko has not left their apartment. She still lives at the Dakota to this day.
Wow.
Yep. So at 5:40, they arrived at the record plant studio. John and Yoko recorded Walking on Thin Ice. And at 10 p.m. they finalized their track. By the time they got back to the Dakota, it was just around, I think, 10 to 11, like 10:50. And as they were walking, a fan approached, which was Mark David Chapman, and called out Lennon's name and shot him. 5 shots rang up, but he was shot 4 times. As I said, he was shot in the chest and lung and neck and shoulder. So
all on the left side.
All on the left side. So obviously, I think Lennon was starting to turn when his name was called, and the first 2 shots would have went through his back, up. One lodged in his lung, one lodged in his neck, and then the other 2 hit his shoulder. He somehow managed to crawl into the gatekeeper's, like, little, what do you call it? Shack?
The
vestibule?
guard hut? The guard hut?
And that's where he collapsed.
Guardhouse.
Yeah. So it was a .38 revolver that shot him. And at 11 p.m. he was pronounced dead. So, yeah. Anything?
Should I be showing the second mugshot?
Yes. Oh, no. Keep the first one up. The other one's for parole.
So, all right. You said Yoko and the doorman saw this, but they weren't caught in the line of fire, but they saw it.
You guys want a little bit of controversy or conspiracy?
Oh, always.
So I was on YouTube and I was watching this Daily Mail piece, and it was this guy David Whelan. He believes that Mark David Chapman didn't actually kill John Lennon. But he said that Whelan got the police notes, and that he claims that it's certain that Lennon was shot in the front. Now, postmortem has never been released.
Oh. And
the death certificate says that he was shot in the chest. So lead New York detective Ron Hoffman said, quote, "He was walking towards the vestibule. Chapman stepped between him and Yoko and shot him. Now, I'm not exactly sure how many feet away he shot him from. I don't think it was more than 10 feet. Oh, he was definitely shot in the back. Yes, sure." Think about that. Yoko was in front of him, not in between. How could Mark David Chapman step in between and have John turn around when he got called? If Yoko's in front, Mark David Chapman steps in between him and Yoko, then it doesn't work.
There's also an issue with human behavior on that one. This was almost 11 p.m. at night. John Lennon is with the woman he loves, his wife, Yoko Ono. Why would he be that far behind her? Generally, they're going to be closer together and walking. They're not going to leave like
and
10,
those
12
two
feet.
were always close. He would even if she got out of the cab after, or the limousine after him, he's going to stand back and let her go ahead.
Yeah. But he's not going to
walk in front of her.
Behind. Yeah, and he's not going to leave 12 feet between enough space for somebody to come in. That one actually seems odd to me.
It does seem odd.
That there would be that space there.
Unless they're just looking for something to make this more controversial.
You know, I have heard theories before that Chapman was just in the wrong place at the wrong time, and they needed somebody to pin it on quickly before it got out of out of sorts. I have heard that like years ago.
Oh, I know, and I'm sure there are people, just like there's people who believe Richard Allen did not kill Abby and Libby, out there who would believe that hoot nanny or that bullshit or whatever the heck you want to call it. I just don't think the trajectory of it works, because from all intents, if he's shot on the left side at 4 different points, he's clearly turning. So if Mark David Chapman stopped in front of him and said, "Hey, John," he's already facing him. So it doesn't make sense.
Unless, and I have no idea because I'm not seeing an image of bullet entry or anything like that. So if he's, and Yoko was in front of John or behind him?
Allegedly, from all my other sources, including John Lennon's book by what's his name? Something Norman. Philip Norman. She was in front.
Okay, then that doesn't work. Because I was thinking, if he turned around to try and protect her, so turns to go left side's going to get it. But that would only work if she was behind him. So no, that one wouldn't do. Because I could see that if he thought that there was a shooter, that he would try and protect
I know
his
reenactments
wife.
Don't hold really a candle, because the only 2 people there that can say, or only people there who can say what happened, is Mark David Chapman, Yoko Ono, and the guard.
Have any of them talked?
Well, you can't take anything that Mark David Chapman says for
Right.
grain of salt.
Okay, so I mean,
So
has
that
the
leaves you
guard.
with the Yoko Ono and the guard. From every account and reenactment, John steps out of the limo, Yoko steps out, John closes the door, she walks ahead, and he proceeds behind her, and he's called from behind. He turns around. So you're like, "Hey, John," and he turns around. Chris just automatically turned to his left.
That's how most of us are going to turn.
Right.
Yeah.
And Chris
Except
is
for
he's a southpaw. So you would think that he would turn to his right. But he, like us, turned to our left. Doesn't seem right to go to the right, right?
No.
When you turn, I don't know why I'm holding my fake gun. It doesn't seem right when you get called your name. It seems off.
Yeah, actually, that is weird. We all automatically turn to our left.
Yeah. So kind of, I like these reenactments that we are doing, because we did that with Ellen Greenberg last week with the knife. So you got the gun. "Hey, John, you're going to turn to your left to see who's calling you." What? Whatever. Anyways, I've never been so distracted in my life.
Alright, we'll shut down.
So anyways, yeah. So anyways, he would turn to his left. You automatically, instinctively turn to your left.
Yeah, I'm actually really curious about the dynamics behind that, the mechanics as to why do we all do that. But that's something I can look up later.
Yes, Chris.
My theory behind it, with you explaining everything, is if he's reached to close the car door, obviously the boot of the car would be on his right-hand side if he's gotten out of the limo, and she's in front of him. If he's stopping to turn around to have somebody call his name, he's going to look to the front of the car, because that's where your driver's going to be if he's getting your attention. So you're automatically going to turn to your left-hand side.
Yes, fair enough. But if I'm not mistaken, the Dakota would, if the car pulled up on the right-hand side, the passenger side would be on the right hand. That's where they got out. Like you said, right-hand side. But he was also a little bit further from the car. So Mark David Chapman could have came in from this side, so the driver wouldn't have seen him, stood behind him, called out John's name, and John turned to the left. We know John's right-handed. So even he turned to the left.
Well, I'm right-handed and I turn to the left.
You're left-handed, you turn to the left. Paul McCartney was the only left-handed member of the band. That's why I know for sure John was right-handed. So to me, unless I hear it coming from this way, I might turn that way. But because of the trajectory of the bullets going in, entering the left, and as he's turning, this is a very JFK situation.
I think what I'm thinking is that for some reason I automatically think that to turn to my left is a shorter distance than turning to my right. Turning to my right seems like it takes more
effort,
time.
maybe.
Whereas turning to the left scenes, and I don't know why. Question though, why? What would be the reason why he would call John Lennon's name? Because he could have easily just come up behind him and shot him and John Lennon, but he wanted. Would it be that he wanted Lennon to know he was there?
He wanted to be seen.
Okay, all right. Because I mean, it could go so easily if you don't call out the name, just boom, 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 you're done.
What's odd is that you would expect, if you're going to remain at the scene, that you would expect to finish yourself off at the same time to ensure that connectivity. So maybe we should take a little bit of look at John's assassin, Mark David Chapman. So Mark David Chapman came to New York City from Hawaii to kill John Lennon. He believed that he was John, and then became angry that he lost who he was and hated John Lennon and had explosive anger towards him, like to the point where he was like ripping up albums or burning albums and ripping up books and stuff. It was still an obsession though, because no matter what, he idolized John. Even married an Asian lady. I think she might have been Japanese descent. So I just know that she was Asian, just like John did. He even signed out of his last shift at his security guard job as John Lennon right before he left to go to New York.
Wow. Okay. Yeah. His night shift security job in Hawaii.
Yes.
Okay, and then when did he come to New York? How soon before?
Well, he went to New York previously, couldn't pull it off, went back to Hawaii, and then he came back in December. I think it was like December 6th, 1980.
Okay, and the date of the assassination was
the 8th.
So he only had arrived in New York 2 days before.
Yes.
Okay, all right.
So apparently he was obsessed with killing John Lennon so that he could take over his fame. He wanted to acquire what Lennon had. He fantasized about detonating a bomb to kill thousands as well. Apparently this is in writings.
Wow.
He had asked Satan to give him the power to kill Lennon, but expects God to forgive him.
Oh, that seems about right. Yeah.
Matt's chuckling.
I'm sorry, that seems about par for the course of delusional.
Oh, get out of here. This is bullshit.
Hey, Satan, give me the power to kill him.
God, please
forgive me.
Yeah.
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 Talk about yin and yang. He was a narcissistic sociopath with grandiosity.
No, really?
Yeah. It was all about him, Chapman. He had no remorse. It was obviously a personal cause homicide.
Personal cause homicide help.
Means, yeah, he had his own mission. It was not a group cause. It wasn't like a gang or nothing.
Okay.
Right? Catcher in the Rye inspired him to find his place in the world, but instead he wanted Lennon's place in the world. There could not have been two of them. So, yeah.
Now, okay, I do remember a couple conspiracy theories about this that I've heard before in the past. I don't know if you want me to mention them or when. You finish with your stuff.
Let me get. So, in June 20th, 1977, Chapman tried to take his own life, but he failed, and he had to stay in a psychiatric hospital. He was obsessed with, like I said, J.D. Salinger and wanting to be Holden Caulfield in Catcher in the Rye, because Caulfield represented an archetypical alienated adolescence. And for some reason, Chapman held that character as like a role model, like in very high regard. And I think if Caulfield was a real person, he probably would have killed him too. Because Chapman was seeing the world kind of like Caulfield did, where it was corrupt and it was full of phonies and people were putting on facades and not acting like themselves because they were just fake. It's been a long time since I've read Catcher in the Rye, so
I never did.
It's a great book.
I can't read.
I love J.D. Salinger, but I can't remember. And like I said, last time I read that book was 20-something years ago.
I think I tried reading yours once when you had it, and I think I got like 5 pages in and was done. So. I think that's one of the reasons why he back to his obsession with Lennon after he kind of had grown a hatred of him. Because Lennon represented to Chapman all that he was not. Lennon was successful. He was revered. He was famous, loved, happy. He found a way to transfer Holden Caulfield's view of people onto Lennon. And he called him a phony and a hypocrite because Lennon was still rich. Despite the fact that Lennon
led the hippie life.
Right.
You know? So, I feel like I have to sneeze. Anyway, so he said to a journalist, Chapman said to a journalist that perhaps my identity would be found in the killing of John Lennon. And sadly, it probably has, because it has become relatively synonymous. He had no criminal history, or history of violence.
Well, he'd been a security guard. So yeah, he
mind
would
you,
have
that's
had to have
back
been...
in the 80s, so things might have been different.
Okay,
70s and 80s.
So they wouldn't have had this same type of vetting and criminal background check. Okay,
No.
all right, yeah.
But there was none. Yeah, you just found relatability in fictional characters, and I think some of us all do, or at least in real people, like famous people, we find that connection to. Most of us are sane enough not to become obsessive or stalkers or whatever. I mean, sometimes we joke about it. Oh, I like to stalk so and so, but we never do it, right? Just because we're normal. We know it's wrong.
And we realize that we are not that person.
And
that person is their own, and we are our own. So we can't be them. Like I can't be John Lennon.
Right.
Like to a normal mind, we know that we aren't that person.
Yeah, and a lot of the times we just know that they're just normal people.
Yeah.
They're just, for the most part, they're normal people living their normal lives.
They still
normal.
put their underwear on.
One leg at a time.
No, I mean they still put it on over their head and through their arms, and like all of us do, right?
Leave.
You don't know they put their underwear on. I'm pretty sure John Lennon was known for not wearing.
I'm pretty sure most of the female celebrities today don't wear any.
I know I don't.
Just ask Diddy. Yeah, I went there. Anyway, so as I had said, Chapman was sentenced, or he stayed at the scene of the crime. He was picked up right away, apprehended right away, and he pleaded, believe it or not, no, not guilty.
He pleaded not guilty. Okay.
But I think he changed it. Excuse me. I'm trying to find it because I lost it. Yeah, he was sentenced to a minimum of 25 years with a maximum to life. So he's 25 to life, and he's had multiple parole hearings. This is where Matt's supposed to put up his parole picture. Picture number 4. The colored mugshot. So after his parole hearings, he's been denied every parole hearing, and I don't think he has another one until 2026.
So next year.
Yeah, and Yoko, I believe, speaks at every single one.
Yeah, I could see that.
So he's being held right now at Attica, which is near Buffalo. So even to this day, he's never shown any remorse for anything that he's done, any pain he's caused John's family. The fact that his youngest son was 5 at the time and grew up for the last 50 years without his dad. 45 years, because John was same 45 years ago.
45 years.
44 technically. So 44 years without his dad. He grew up without him. Not to mention the fact that he is working on his relationship with Julian, his oldest son. So there was a lot. He was very lost with, like, amongst his family. His family missed him deeply. His bandmates also missed him deeply, although there was some conspiracy about how Paul reacted, but I don't take stock in that, because when you first hear news like that, you're in shock and everybody reacts differently.
And there would have been so much going through his mind, because there had been issues between them, so there would have been things I couldn't see them, the bandmates, but yeah, they might react not how somebody would always expect.
Yeah, well, I know
shocked.
that Ringo and George took it very hard, but Paul seemed on the outside very reserved and calm, but I think that's just naturally Paul's demeanor.
And he's British.
And that's exactly it.
Stiff upper lip.
Stiff upper lip. And he was also being accosted by people while he's walking through media, being asked these questions, and of course you just want to get the hell out of there. Yeah.
You wonder also if there would have been any type of fear as to this happened to Paul, or this happened to John, could this happen to us too?
Well, I'm sure that's always a possibility.
I'm sure, but it hits home a lot more when the bandmates gets
I
murdered.
think what it does, and I think this is my personal opinion on that matter is that your bandmate that you've known since you were a teenager was just murdered on the sidewalk, essentially outside their home. That puts it into your life into perspective, saying we're not untouchable, we're not invincible. Like, this can happen, you know. And I think in the long run, it's you don't know how to react. Yeah. Like, if I found out one of my friends was gunned down on their like front porch or something for no reason, I think it would be like shocked. I would probably be shocked, and if you get me at the right time, I'm going to be shut down. And that might have been the way Paul dealt with it. He just shut down. It was just too much to comprehend. He shut down. He gave a quick blah, blah, blah. People misconstrued that as being ice cold. But maybe that's how he dealt with it.
Yeah. Everyone deals differently.
Everybody does deal differently. Although we could have said that last week, or last episode 2 with Ellen Greenberg's case, with how Sam reacted, conducted himself on the 911 call. This is different. This is blatant murder. Like, right out front. Right out the gate. And there was nothing that was going to stop this, I don't think. It's not like Chapman was writing letters and sending stuff to him all the time, like you see most stalkers doing. They're usually like writing fan mail all the time, making telephone calls, showing up at their place of work. Yeah, Chapman showed up outside his house or at his apartment building a couple times, but was never recognized, he never made contact until that day when he got his album signed. And the fact that John signed that, so like, yeah, sure, I can sign that, and signed it for him, you would think that might have turned something off. Well, maybe I shouldn't kill him. He doesn't seem that bad of a dude. You know, like, but it didn't. It almost like it heightened because he didn't leave. Well, even after that, he did not leave. He stuck around.
On that one, though,
waited.
If Chapman had been expecting maybe that John's going to sign it, he's going to see me and recognize how great I am or that I'm so special. If all that John had done was, oh, yeah, thanks. Okay, thank you. And handed it back, then in Chapman's mind, it might have been, he didn't even know me. He didn't even recognize how great, like, it could escalate. What gets me is like you said, there was not the normal pattern of escalation that normally happens where contact keeps getting made, it increases, the severity of it increases, then restraining orders. This just kind of went from 0 to 100.
Yeah. And it's also important to know that it's not just the famous people who can become victims of stalking.
Oh, no.
And for law enforcement, stalking is very difficult to deal with in terms of the law. Because a lot of the times, you have a stalker, you might not know who they are. And law enforcement can't do anything about that. They don't know who it is. They really can't do anything about it. And even when there's times when they do know who is stalking you, until the most they can do is put a no contact order or restraining order. That's it. They can't go out and force them because it's still kind of hearsay. Until they physically do something to you, law enforcement can't step in. And I know that aggravates a lot of law enforcement officers and agents and stuff like that, because it's like, you want to prevent crime, you don't really want to bring more. But such is the law. You have to follow what the law is. You have to enforce it as such. And it's one of those things that we just have to, deal with. I mean, it could be as simple as Colleen just smiling at the guy at Tim Hortons and just getting her coffee and driving away.
And something gets triggered in him, and he's like,
oh,
that's her.
And then next time she comes, he looks at the type of car. Well, maybe he's off. He waits till he knows she comes every day at 8 a.m. So he gets in his car when he's off and waits for her and then follows her. Like, it's not hard.
Now you have me scared to go to Tim Hortons. Thank you.
Yeah, but you don't go to Tim Hortons on a regular basis.
Good point. The other thing, like, for law, is that they can't arrest somebody based on the idea that a crime might be committed. That's their biggest problem. Is so a stalker is saying, "Oh, I'm going to do this. Or they might escalate. You can't arrest somebody for something they have not done yet.
They could stalk you for 10 years and not have touched you, and the law enforcement can't do dick.
Even many threats can't be dealt with.
I think for people who want to know more about stalking, John Douglas and Mark Olshaker have one of the books is Obsession, and it covers a lot of stalking cases. and helps you. And also in the CCM, which most of you can't or won't fork out $100 for, the stalking chapter on this was phenomenal, and it actually helped me with this whole thing. It like has everything. It has different like domestic homicide. It has stalking, everything. It's got everything in it, and it can be very helpful. Actually, I found it to really help me figure out a lot of things, especially with this case, because it's like, but he didn't stalk him for long, and I've always known that. Yes, you can be obsessed with somebody for a long time, but you're not actually physically going to them. But this guy did. He tried twice. Like, he tried the first time, he chickened out, he couldn't do it. So then he tried the second time, and he was successful. Unfortunately, he was successful. The first time he actually took out a gun and actually shot him, John did not make it. Sometimes they do. But it was hard to get in my mindset in that stalker phase. Like, I couldn't put my mindset in what Mark David Chapman was feeling, and the CCM actually really helped me with that.
The interesting thing I remember is, on research I've done for other podcasts on some conspiracy theories, I have actually come across this John Lennon's assassination before. And there have been theories out for years that Mark David Chapman was actually, I don't even know the right term to use, almost like a sleeper agent. The idea is that he was a part of the CIA Black Ops.
I don't think he was smart enough.
No, and that what the comments had sometimes been is that he'd been programmed with mind control, and or with whatever some of the Black Ops the CIA did in the 70s, and that, because like you said, he went from 0 to 100 so quickly, and he targeted him. The other one that seemed to really set off a lot of conspiracy theorists was The Catcher in the Rye, because I guess that book has been found in the belongings of a number of assassins.
Oh, I closed it. But yeah, apparently, though, Mark David Chapman also had a hit list.
Yeah. There has been quite a bit of theories thrown about that this was a targeted assassination by higher ups, and Chapman was their stool pigeon. He was the one they chose to do it. However, he was program paid, whatever. But that's been a theory that has been skirting around for a while. That was there a reason why a government, a corporation, a higher entity, whatever, would want John Lennon gone? And there have been ideas that he was very outspoken.
Excuse me.
Like you said, and he could implement change.
Oh, there is definitely reason to believe that. I think one of the reasons that John did keep to himself after in that last few years was because he was afraid for his life. So he would keep to himself, keep to a routine, which never keep to a routine.
Right.
I think it just came to the point where did Matt put up the murder board yet, Chris? Oh fuck, because we're getting to it close. So let's put if you can figure out how to do it, that'd be great. I don't blame him for being taken aback or a little bit afraid for not only deportation but possible assassination. But I guess this was not his view of how he would be assassinated if he was. His political views were very out there, very liberal, and it was a very conservative time. He was very much against war, and war fuels America's economy.
Oh, and this was height of Cold War.
And this was height of, just after, I think it just followed the Vietnam, or was also during Vietnam. So him speaking out against Vietnam was not looked upon well with the American government. So anyways, but I did just say that Chapman also had a hit list. So on that hit list was Johnny Carson, George C. Scott, Jackie Kennedy Onassis, Marlon Brando, and Walter Cronkite.
Interesting.
It's a very...
Those are actually all very influential people.
Very influential, especially Jackie Onassis.
Jackie Onassis. Actually, I was thinking Carson.
Well, yeah, because Carson had the platform.
He had the platform. He could talk. I still just it still keeps rambling through my mind are the conspiracy theories I've heard about. Was Chapman part of some of the different black ops? And I can't even think of the name of them right. But we're the mind control, the CIA mind control.
We covered that, didn't we?
Yeah, we did.
Ultra.
Oh, MK Ultra.
MK Ultra.
Thank you. MK. That one has been theorized that he was part of MK Ultra.
Yeah.
And I don't know. And when you give
you
his
mention
list,
it, I think you hit a nerve, because I think when I was doing that podcast with Matt on our old show, Mystery Map Spotlight, I thought I saw his name come up.
Yeah.
But I can't quite remember or if we even mentioned it.
Because two of the big points, a couple of things that are really odd is the J.D. Salinger book, Catcher in the Rye. That one has been found with many assassins, all which have been linked back to CIA MK Ultra. The other thing, and it's weird, this is more in terms, I think, of how the media does it, not really. But why are many of these assassins 3 names? Why is it not just Mark Chapman?
It's not just that, it's Theodore Robert Bundy.
Exactly.
John Wayne
Gacy.
Gacy.
They want to distinguish it from any other Robert Bundys.
Yeah.
Or Ted Bundy. Yeah.
But you know, like it's so many get the so many assassins do get the John Wilkes Booth.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, I think Matt's right. I think it's to separate them from any possible duplicate names like Ted Smith or John Smith, etc., etc. My thing with this is that this one I don't think could have been avoided. I think if unless Mark David Chapman himself decided to pussy out.
Right.
Which he wasn't.
No.
You know what I think is funny, though? When you think about it, whenever there's a very influential, not well-liked leader in control of things, Catcher in the Rye gets banned. Yeah. It gets banned from school curriculum. It gets banned from libraries. It gets banned. Mom said she only read it once against the rule because when she was in school it was banned.
There has been theories with because of course there's theories about everything, but one of the conspiracy theories
and it's on the ban list now.
Is that there's a phrase in the book was actually used to trigger assassins or sleeper cells, that when they'd read the book and they'd read this certain line, it would then start their programming. Is what one of the ideas. Now these are all
as somebody who's read the book, I can assure you I have never assassinated anybody.
No, but you weren't
I know,
programmed.
I'm just
you weren't programmed. Yeah. It is odd to me. What is so odd is that he went from the 0 to 100. There was no letter campaign. There was no
phone calls.
Yeah,
notes left. Presents left at the gate. Nothing.
It was just boom. That's the odd part to me.
What?
You want it back to the camera? I got the murder board up right now.
Yeah. We're editing on the spot.
Yeah, that is the odd part to me. And what is there any idea what would have happened to John Lennon had he survived? Were there things that he had in the works that he was supposed to be doing?
Well, yeah, because he was in the process of recording Milk and Honey, which came out posthumously. I can't remember which year. I want to say 82. Yoko finished the album and got it out. I think he was getting set to possibly tour again, which was unusual for John, because he didn't like touring at all. He had just done some stuff with Elton John. He'd done some stuff with David Bowie. He made a rare appearance. I think it was on Saturday Night Live with Elton John. So he was doing things. He was... After stepping away and becoming a father to Sean, he stepped into the father role, a role he took very seriously, and he stepped away from not only the drugs, but the public life. And it was from the time that Sean was born until 1980, when Sean was 5, that he released Double Fantasy. Otherwise, he was doing nothing. He was trying to get his career back. He was ready.
So he was stepping back into the limelight when he got assassinated, which... That actually, to me, that leads.
I think Double Fantasy was his first album in over 5 years.
That leads further into the idea to me that this was a planned plot by something else, because he's starting to come back into the public light. What is he going to do? Is he going to do another big political issue? Is something going to... That leads a little more credence to the idea that this might have been planned somehow.
If you listen to Double Fantasy compared to, say, let's say, Mind Games, the album itself is less political and more of a love story to Yoko and to their relationship in general. Just like Starting Over, Angel, Kiss Kiss Kiss, which is one of River's favorite songs because she just Watching the Wheels Go Round, like Watching the Wheels is one of my favorite songs. And I think what it was, it was a step away from the politics. I think his thought process was, I'm not coming out of the gate with political stuff. I'm going to come out with a new sound. And the album was doing great. Like, it was skyrocketing. Album sales were through the roof. People were buying it. They loved it. I think because it was a different side of John. And if you listen to just, like, Starting Over, it's a bit cheeky, but loving. Like, like, we're starting over, and he does that little Elvis thing in the middle of it. I think he had changed so much and matured so differently within the last 5 to 6 years, and being off the drugs didn't hurt.
Yeah.
He was a different person.
But no one could have known what he actually would have done with it, even though that could have been scary. That this idea, this guy's coming back in. We can't control him. He's now off the drugs, so anything he says, he's completely lucid. That could have been an idea. It's so. I love conspiracy theories.
I know you
obviously.
do. And I knew you would like the conspiracy that I did bring, and you brought your own. So
yeah.
Booyah.
So, I mean, to me, I am actually much more in the idea that this was something set up and planned.
When you go to assassinations or celebrity deaths connected to the CIA, I'm going to go with Elvis over John Lennon or over Mark David Chapman, because Elvis, we made some good points in the Elvis podcast, and Carly's going to love this. We think he was a CIA agent who faked his death because he had so many connections in other countries, plus his military background, the way that he could go in and out of countries that normal Americans couldn't do. He was an intelligence gatherer, but then he had to, step back, and people were onto it, maybe possibly onto him. So now he's a preacher in the Carolinas, and you can find him on YouTube, Pastor Bob, or what is it, Reverend Bob? And Bob Joyce, right. You can find him on YouTube, and both Carly and I swear to God that that's fucking Elvis, because he looks like Elvis, he sounds like Elvis. It's just, yeah. So I would be more thinking that if you're going to do the CIA plot, Elvis is probably closer to being involved in some idiot like Mark David Chapman who can talk his way out of a paper box.
But Mark David Chapman could be a very good candidate for like MK Ultra or anything. Did he have any military background? No. Okay. All right. It's just me personally. I think Elvis is dead. I don't really. Even me who loves conspiracy theories. That's one I don't.
I'm gonna have
into,
to show
but
calling
anyway.
this Reverend Bob Joyce because No. Once you see it, you can't unsee it.
It's scary.
You can't unsee it.
Well, the other thing is, and I mean, my sister might kill me for this one. I don't like Elvis, so I'm perfectly fine if he's dead. I can give him credit. He was a good musician, did a lot, but
yeah. Chris is upset. Chris is always upset.
I'm not an Elvis fan. I never was, so
I'm not an Elvis fan either, but I appreciate what he did for music.
That's exactly it. I can appreciate his talent.
Matthew. I hope to God that did not make it on the fucking microphone. It probably did. Yeah.
Now, Yoko.
Well, yeah. So did the Beatles.
Has the doorman ever come forward and like said anything or written?
Honestly,
anything?
I don't think the doorman and Yoko directly saw anything.
Okay.
If my theory is correct, which I assume it is from all the depictions and everything other than that one YouTube video, she was ahead of him, which meant her back was turned. And the doorman was likely opening the door, so door, he was probably busy. Yes, Chris.
Were they not surrounded by paparazzi at the time? No, which is odd, because 90% of the time when John went out and he returned home, there was always paparazzi around.
That is odd.
That is true, but also John had more freedom in New York City. It's not like it was in England or Britain where paparazzi literally feeds off of your soul, right? Princess Di, right? They feed off your soul. Where back in New York City, a lot of stars can walk freely and not be bothered. So it might have just been one of those times. Also, it was freaking December. Who wants to be in New York City in December at 11 o'clock at night?
December, New York, Christmas in New York, winter in New York City.
Well, yeah, obviously, but they're obviously not going to necessarily be at that. They're going to do other things. They're not going to walk around the Dakota in the freezing.
That is odd. You'd think there would at least be one or two cameramen out there. And did nobody get it on film?
They did snap that picture of him signing the autograph.
Yeah,
Matt, you can throw that up. Picture number 3. John signing the album. That was one of the last photos ever shot of John. He is leaving the Dakota to go to the studio to record, and he's signing that double fantasy album with Mark David Chapman, and it's in the same picture. You have your unsub and you have your victim in the same picture.
Wow,
like that is crazy. So, yeah, like.
But it just, you'd think there would be
one camera.
But then again, it's not like now where everybody has a cell phone.
There's no Ring doorbell cams.
Yeah, so it is.
Privacy is few and far in between. But yeah, back then.
And we still haven't given Peace a chance.
No, we haven't given Peace a chance. It's actually, if anything, John Lennon would be appalled to see what's going on in the world right now. I'm pretty sure I can speak freely for that. I think most of us are. But yeah. Anyways, so it's unfortunate. John's no longer with us. I would love to have him have survived that and see how he evolved.
What was lost? What talent and skill? What future masterpieces were lost?
Or what he would say politically if he did say anything politically. He might have decided to keep his mouth shut. You don't know. We don't know. John's not the person to strike me as keeping his mouth shut. So.
Well, I can see as the Cold War was ramping up in the 80s before the end of the USSR, I could see he probably would have had quite a bit to say about it.
Honestly, if I'm being completely truthful, if he had survived, probably another 10 years, he would have been assassinated 10 years later.
Yeah.
If not 12.
Could you imagine him during the early part of the Gulf Wars?
That's where I'm going, like the 12, right?
Yeah.
92. Yeah. I don't think I think he wouldn't have been able to.
I still, and I always have really felt that there was something else behind this rather than just a lone guy who was narcissistic and insane.
The lone shooter on the grassy knoll.
Yeah, I guess so. Yeah.
I just think it's sad that we lost such a talented person and such an influential person. And I know there's some people out there going, John Lennon sucks. Or he was the blah, blah, blah. I know certain people are thinking that. But that's your opinion. And my opinion is that we lost an incredibly talented artist. Somebody who influenced music from all over the globe for decades and still is to this day. If I'm not mistaken, the Beatles just won a Grammy for Now and Then, or Then and Now. I can't remember the album title. I'm having a moment.
Even take away the whole fact that it was John Lennon, that he was this great singer-songwriter. This was a man. He was somebody's son. He was somebody's husband, somebody's father.
Friends.
He was loved. And no matter what, even if we had no name for him, it is sad that somebody died.
Yeah, somebody took control over him.
His family lost him. They lost their friend, their family. Yeah,
absolutely. So with that, we will see you guys in 2 weeks. And Nancy is going to be leading the next one, I think, on the Black Dahlia. So stay tuned for case number 3. Have a good night.